was a chilly autumn evening when I found myself locking up the Little Caesars restaurant where I worked. The last customer had left, and the neon sign flickered eerily in the dimly lit parking lot. The pungent aroma of pizza still hung in the air as I pulled down the metal shutters, sealing myself inside. Little Caesars was never a bustling place, but tonight was different. There was a tension in the atmosphere that I couldn't quite put my finger on. Maybe it was the flickering fluorescent lights, casting strange shadows across the worn, checkered floor tiles. Or perhaps it was the faint whispering of the old ventilation system, creating an unsettling symphony in the empty space. As I began my routine of cleaning the counters and organizing the ingredients, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. My heart raced, and I started my eyes around the restaurant, expecting to see someone or something lurking in the shadows. But there was nothing. Just usual pizza boxes stacked neatly by the ovens. As the night wore on, the feeling of unease grew stronger. Every creak of the floorboards seemed amplified, echoing through the empty restaurant. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, something was wrong. I continued my work, trying to brush off my growing sense of dread. But then, I heard a soft, rhythmic tapping coming from the back of the kitchen. My blood ran cold as I slowly made my way towards the sound. It was coming from the walk-in freezer. With trembling hands, I pushed the freezer door open, and there, in the dim light, I saw a sight that sent shivers down my spine. The stacks of pizza dough boxes had been knocked over, and flour was scattered all over the floor. But that wasn't the worst part. In the center of the mess, there was a child's handprint, made of flour, as if a small, unseen hand had reached out and touched the floor. My mind raced with confusion and fear. How could a child have gotten in here? There were no signs of forced entry, and I was sure I had locked the front door. I quickly cleaned up the mess, my hands shaking, and locked the freezer door behind me. As I returned to the front of the restaurant, I noticed that the flickering lights had become more erratic, casting eerie shadows that danced around me. The whispering of the ventilation system had turned into a haunting chorus of voices, too faint to understand, but too close for comfort. I decided to call my manager, hoping for some reassurance or guidance. But as I dialed the number, a hand landed on my shoulder, causing me to jump out of my skin. I turned around, expecting to see a coworker, but there was no one there. Just an empty, dimly lit restaurant. I hung up the phone and made my way towards the exit, my footsteps echoing loudly in the quiet space. Just as I reached the front door, I heard it again, soft tapping, this time coming from the window. I slowly turned to look, and my heart nearly stopped. There, on the other side of the glass, were countless small handprints, smeared with flour, as if a horde of invisible children were pressing their tiny hands against the window, watching me with unseen eyes. Terrified, I fumbled with the keys, finally managing to unlock the door and burst out into the parking lot. I didn't look back as I sprinted to my car and sped away from that cursed Little Caesars. To this day, I can't explain what happened that night. I never returned to that job, and I never set foot in that restaurant again. But one thing is for certain: there are places in this world where the line between the real and the unreal is thin, and Little Caesars was one of them that fateful night. In the days that followed, I couldn't escape the memories of that harrowing night at the Little Caesars. I tried to convince myself that it had all been a bizarre and elaborate prank, or perhaps just a vivid hallucination brought on by exhaustion and stress. But the eerie feeling that I was being watched persisted, like an unsettling shadow haunting my every move. Sleepless nights became my norm. I would lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing with thoughts of those ghostly handprints and the inexplicable events that had unfolded. I even considered seeking professional help, fearing that I might be losing my grip on reality. One evening, as I wandered the streets in a futile attempt to clear my mind, I found myself drawn back to the abandoned Little Caesars. It had been weeks since that night, and I felt compelled to confront whatever had terrified me so deeply. The restaurant stood silent and dark, an ominous silhouette against the night sky. I hesitated at the entrance, my heart pounding in my chest. With a trembling hand, I pushed open the door and stepped inside. The atmosphere was different now, almost normal, with the lights steadily illuminating the empty dining area. The pizza ovens hummed softly, and the familiar scent of pizza dough hung in the air. I tried to convince myself that I had overreacted, that there was nothing to fear. But then I heard it again, the soft tapping, now louder and more persistent. My gaze fixed on the walk-in freezer, and I felt a chill crawl up my spine. Reluctantly, I approached the freezer door and pulled it open. Inside, the dough boxes were stacked neatly as they should have been. There was no sign of flour or handprints. I closed the door, my mind reeling with confusion. Had I imagined it all? Just as I was about to turn and leave, a voice echoed through the empty restaurant. "You shouldn't have come back." I froze, my heart stopping in my chest. The voice was soft, almost a whisper, but it carried an undeniable menace. I scanned the room, but there was no one there, no source for the voice. Panic set in, and I dashed for the exit, but the door slammed shut before I could reach it, trapping me inside. The lights above flickered and dimmed, casting the restaurant into an eerie darkness. Then, the whispering started again, a cacophony of voices that seemed to come from all directions. They spoke in hushed, unintelligible tones, and it felt as if they were closing in on me, pressing on my sanity. Desperation took hold of me, and I screamed for help, pounding on the door, but there was no response. The voices grew louder, more sinister, and I covered my ears in a futile attempt to block them out. And just when I thought I couldn't bear it any longer, the lights flickered back to life, and the door swung open. I stumbled out into the night, gasping for air, my body drenched in cold sweat. I never returned to that Little Caesars, and I never spoke of what happened that night to anyone. But the memories still haunt me, a reminder that there are places in this world where the boundaries of reality and terror blur, and sometimes it's best to leave those dark secrets undisturbed.